It started with a tweet.
A lot of amazing things started.
Twitter co-founder and then CEO Jack Dorsey launching the new social network in 2006, simply writing, "Just setting up my Twitter."
Have you tweeted today?
The new website limited posts to just 140 characters for compatibility with text messaging.
I'm just going to send another little tweet.
Its popularity exploding a few years later, thanks to celebrity users like Oprah and Ashton Kutcher.
I believe that we're at a place now with social media where one person's voice can be as powerful as an entire news network.
But its ability to share immediate breaking news, from the death of Whitney Houston to the Arab Spring protests and uprisings, propelled Twitter into the mainstream.
It is the easiest way to see what's happening in the world right now, live. And it breaks news for so many people. A lot of people just use it to see what's breaking and what's new in the world.
In 2011, the word tweet was entered into the dictionary. And 2 years later, the company went public in an IPO that raised $1.8 billion. Twitter also front and center during the 2016 election, with both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump using the site through their campaigns. And once elected, former President Trump tweeting everything from policy changes to attacks on the media. Jack Dorsey defending Twitter's longstanding policy of freedom of opinion and expression to Congress a few years later.
Our early and strong defense of open and free exchange has enabled Twitter to be the platform for activists, marginalized communities, whistleblowers, journalists, governments, and the most influential people around the world.
That changed in 2021 following the January 6th attack on the Capitol, when Twitter joined other social media platforms in banning Trump, quote, due to the risk of further incitement of violence. Through the years, Twitter hashtags also the center of social movements, including Black Lives Matter and Me Too. Then last year, billionaire Elon Musk bought Twitter for a whopping $44 billion after a public legal spat with the company's board.
Well, I don't want to disrupt something for the sake of disrupting it. It's more like if there is a better product, that's great.
Musk's tenure has been marked with massive changes at the social media giant, including laying off over half the staff and taking away verified account checkmarks unless users pay for it. And then Musk stepping down as CEO after just a few months. And in June, Linda Yaccarino taking over as the company's CEO.
The general idea is Linda will operate the company and I will build product.
Now Twitter is facing new competition from Meta's Threads app, and the site is losing that iconic bird logo and rebranding as just X. CEO Linda Yaccarino says the move is just the start of the company's new direction, tweeting, "X is the future state of unlimited interactivity, centered in audio, video, messaging, payments, banking, creating a global marketplace for ideas, goods, services, and opportunities."
All right, that was Maya Eaglin. A lot to get into here. So for more on the future of Elon Musk's Twitter rebrand, or X, and the future of this social media company, let's bring in Tim Higgins. He is a Wall Street Journal reporter and author of Power Play, Tesla, Elon Musk, and the Bet of the Century. And this is, speaking of bets, Tim, kind of an interesting one. Why now? I know is the question many people are going to be asking. Why rebrand the company now? And we've been calling it Twitter for a long time, decades, or at least 1+ decade. Is it fair to wonder, I guess, if it's still going to stick, or people are going to be comfortable now with just X?
It's going to be a name that I think a lot of people are going to take a while to kind of absorb, adopt. And for many, it might always just be that company that was known as Twitter. But the question of why now? Well, it's been kind of a controversial run here in the last few weeks. You remember the month began with Elon limiting the amount of tweets that a user could read because he was in a battle with companies scraping the company's data for their AI purposes. And then we had Facebook parent Meta Platforms announce they were going to do their own Twitter rival, and they launched Threads. And so really kind of a stretch of just some bad news. And here we have him essentially kind of trying to come out with something new and sparkly, the new name.
I'm glad that you brought that up. Speaking of new, right? So Facebook, or now Meta, does come out with Threads. Do you think that might be the impetus for sort of rethinking the presentation of this platform?
Well, Elon has had some big ambitions and big ideas for Twitter, for this property for a while. It is not just a platform for free speech, as he talks about a lot, but he sees it as kind of the building blocks for something much bigger, a so-called super app, an app that would be something like WeChat in China, where a user's digital life would be at the center. It wouldn't just be for social media. It would be for communication. It would be for banking. It would be for commerce. It would be your digital life. Something we see in China, but here in the U.S., we haven't seen that quite exactly play out. He thinks there's a market for it. And it gets back to that original idea of one of his original startups so many years ago, which was X.com. That idea was to be the digital bank of the future, something that was really kind of ahead of its time. And now he seems to be adopting a lot of those favorite ideas and bringing them to Twitter, to X, whatever this will be. We're not quite sure, but that's kind of the bigger, broader vision for this company.
So it's like this limitless potential type of idea, right? But I think a lot of people are also going to be wondering the language. I mean, this has been part of our lexicon and culture for so long. Can we not talk about tweets anymore? Do users have to think of a different way to articulate what it is they're putting out on social media?
Well, is it Xing? I'm not sure. To your point, if you're a startup, you dream of having this kind of vocabulary where somebody says, I'm going to tweet, or I'm going to PayPal you, or I'm going to Venmo you something. You want that. When your name becomes something like a verb, that's a very good sign. And that's why a lot of analysts and critics today are questioning why Elon would want to give up this great brand name of Twitter, this almost iconic bird logo. Why kind of throw that away? Well, it's Elon Musk, and he has a vision, and he is often kind of going against the grain. So we'll have to see what it really means for him and means for us, the users.
Well, is that also the point? I mean, is he trying to erase the legacy of Twitter? Because, you know, I lived in San Francisco for a long time. I understand the vibe of the city and where this company came from. And when you talk about tweeting, it's kind of like tongue-in-cheek. But this X situation feels a little bit more ominous, and maybe they're saying big picture. But does this fit with the vibe of the company in general?
It's a new vibe. It's a new day for Twitter, for X. Definitely a kind of he's trying to mark a new era. And there's no doubt about it. Elon has been pushing back against the company's traditional culture, that kind of more liberal, perhaps leaning culture that you see in San Francisco. He feels like perhaps Twitter had been pushing back against some more conservative voices. He wants it to be a platform for everybody, for all kinds of speech, even speech you disagree with. That's kind of his bigger vision. The idea of X, though, that name, it really has a long history with him. As I mentioned, one of his early companies was X.com, but he named one of his cars at Tesla, the Model X. He's even named one of his children X.
Which is definitely taking it to another level. Let's go big picture, Tim. And lastly, you know, you've obviously written the book on Elon Musk and his leadership. How do you think this latest big shift at Twitter is going to impact sort of all of his businesses and his legacy in general?
Well, the long-term legacy will be, you know, years to come here as he's doing so many different things. But this is yet another example of his enormous risk appetite, his willingness to take just huge gambles on something that he thinks he sees as the potential where a lot of people do not understand it, right? First, it was rockets to go into outer space, making electric cars sexy. Now he's taking this thing, Twitter, which everybody knows and kind of understands, and saying, no, I'm going to turn it on its head. I'm going to throw away its name, and it's going to be something new and potentially bigger, potentially worth way more than you thought it could be.
And apparently, as journalists, we'll be Xing in the very near future. Tim Higgins, thank you so much from the Wall Street Journal for that.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.